Valde Ferradaz is the Chief Executive Officer for Ignition Telecoms and Head of MVN-X. Valde, it's good to see you. How are you doing firstly?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Good weather as usual down here at the coast. Fantastic. Thanks very much.
Well, thanks for rubbing in the beautiful weather you're having in KZN, but it's great to chat to you. And I think it's under very interesting times as the world is still wrapped under this pandemic, COVID-19, and you must have seen some very interesting things. And I want to talk about MVNX, Ignition Telecoms. What services do MVNX offer?
Yeah, so Ignition Telecoms is part of, just to recap, Ignition Telecoms is part of the Ignition Group. We have a financial services sector that we address in the market. We have a digital marketplace that does acquisition and retention for all the mobile operators, for example, and internationally. And then we have a new service, which is a banking service. And then we have the telco services. And under the telco services, which I head up, we have MVNX, which is kind of the enabler of MVNOs. So our big clients are clients like Standard Bank Mobile, Mr. Price, retailers, mobile, and other MVNOs. So we're the leaders in that space. And we have another company called Mobius, which is part of the Ignition Telecoms, which is also an integrator of MVNOs and provides service for MVNOs. And we recently integrated Pick and Pay and Boxer to MTN. So we are connected to, so in our telco space, what we do is we both aggregate, so we'll provide complete MVNO enabling services. So we'll come, brands come to us, we will do a feasibility study on their reach, on the distribution, on their value proposition. We'll put it through to their boards, so this goes for financial approval, so the business models are approved. And then once that's approved, we actually integrate, we do all of the technical integration. So really, we can turn any brand into a full telco service provider model. We provide the customer care, we provide the supply chain, we do the billing, we do the collections. So really turnkey solution on MVNOs.
That's
and
amazing.
We are both, thank you very much. And we are now connected. We are the first company to be integrated both to Cell C and to MTN. So we are able to provide both connectivity to those operators to the market. And of course, we're talking to other mobile operators as well.
Yeah, I mean, as a customer, you mentioned some big brands, the likes of Mr. Price, Standard Bank. How many people do I need as an organization to make it kind of feasible to come to you guys to say, I want some MVNO services? What is it, 100,000 customers? Or what is that entry point?
I think you're spot on. I think when you get to 100,000 active subscriber base that you are, providing them value and they're recurring customers, I think you can break even pretty quick. You're talking about anything from, depends how you grow, from 8 months to 18 months break even. And the models are sophisticated, because everybody thinks that MVNOs are complicated. But you can have what we call as a light MVNO or a heavy MVNO. And a light MVNO is where we take like a prepaid offering and we make it simple for your customers. It can be pretty small and still be lucrative, because we got the buying power. We buy quite well from the operators because we buy a lot of volume for all of our customers. So we're also able to aggregate and pass that value back onto our own customers. And then because our platform is already established, our services are quite affordable, so it's not, you don't have to roll out any infrastructure. You basically just pay a cost per subscriber. And then, your business model we also help you with. So some customers are making it happen with 20,000 subscribers and they're profitable. And, other customers need a bigger mass because of their margins,
Yes.
And it all depends how much you want to make. You can make it really complicated, like postpaid, or you can make it really simple, like prepaid.
Yeah.
Some of our clients have rewards mechanisms which embed data in the rewards. Other clients have a simple prepaid offering, B2B or B2C. So, it depends what kind of model you go to market with.
So the MVNO space is not new. It's been around for a while now, but it's constantly being evolving. What kind of innovations and transformation are you seeing happening in the MVNO space?
We're seeing a lot of appetite to be able to offer connectivity, from government, brands, around the education sector, the retail sector, the banking sector. So you saw F&B innovate in that space, start with the whole kind of digital digitization, technology space, as part of their banking services, and then really embodying connectivity as part of their offering to their customers, because they knew that connectivity was an important commodity and value to their
Yes.
base. But they were way ahead of the curve, and now the brands are starting to realize that, owning the customer and fighting for the share of the wallet in a shrinking economy is very valuable. So you've got a base that visits your stores, you've got a recurring customer, you've got the reach. Because what makes MVNO successful typically is you've got to have reach. You've got to be able to reach the customer, number one. So, you look at big brands like the big retailers and banks, they already got the reach, more so than the operators. You can go to one of their stores and you can buy a lot of stuff. So, but why can't you buy affordable data? Why can't you get connected home? Why can't you have financial services? And as you see that whole diversification convergence from the big retailers, where they are offering best value for your share of wallet. And it's very important in an economy where unemployment is increasing, because normally the purse is held by a member of the family or two members of the family who work. So you've got to provide as many services as you can, as close to the customer: education, pharmaceutical, medicines, emergency, connectivity, study, etc. So it's an obvious choice for big brands to say, I want to become an MVNO. And because of the technology platforms, and this is where the whole evolution has arrived, we've got state-of-the-art BSS and OSS systems, so whether we have to charge you and rate your calls, or throttle you, or provide you a one-day bundle, or a 1-minute bundle, or 24-hour bundle, we can do all of those things. And we can wire you up to the core network. So basically, all we do is we integrate the networks very well. And then we give you this platform, this CRM platform, and this customer-facing front ends, whether it's web or apps that you use in your own platform. And we give you all of those services behind the scenes. So all of a sudden, the brands have realized, I don't need to get involved in the business that I don't understand. I can actually just provide a service to my customers and have a better margins. So the margins they're getting from the operators is, everybody knows the range between, 4 to 8 or 9% and 10%. The margins in MVNOs can be in the mid-30s or higher. So, the retailers are taking those margins and passing them back onto the consumer. So the banking. So it starts making financial sense from them, and you just think about the innovation of a customer on an app. Like, for example, I'm a Smart Shopper customer, or I'm a F&B customer. There's no reason why I shouldn't be able to top up my connected home, top up my mobile, transfer money, buy my groceries, and get rewarded in the most valuable commodity today. So, and South Africa is a little bit behind the curve, because it's been somewhat unregulated till now. And I don't think, if you look at and spectrum has been somewhat restricted. So I'm very hopeful that, in the innovation, not only from the technology side, which already exists. So there are world-class platforms available now. It can be integration, but almost plug and play for your consumer. You get a branded SIM, you get a branded packaging, a branded experience. It's all completely like a service provider model. And it's interesting because in the old days, if you remember correctly, there were 12 service providers that launched and Vodafone and MTN launched.
That's right.
And the 12 service providers used to compete for the consumer. And then what the networks did is they went and acquired all of that base and took control of the base. So they became the network operator and the service provider, and they control distribution. And what you're starting to see in most advanced markets, in unwinding of that, with the service provider model is going back into the market, and the operators are becoming more the enablers of, technology, digitization, because, they can't really be everything to everybody. It's a very competitive market now.
So interesting. And when you look at the data partnerships and the benefits in a retail environment, you've just touched on a few of them, but there are tremendous benefits.
Yes, I think as a consumer, you get rewarded traditionally to discounting of products, or you get 2 for 1. But one of the most, again, a very valuable, important commodity for society, for the government, for education, etc., is data. So then a lot has to be done about connecting the home, connecting the office, and connecting the consumer. And the divide, unfortunately, is getting, even on unemployment in the rural areas and the non sort of city areas, you can see that the divide is getting bigger. And telecoms as an obligation to close that gap through being one of the most valuable enterprise type commodities that you can get for a consumer. You know, I don't have to catch a taxi. I can educate myself at home if I can afford internet. So both the fiber rollout and the fixed LTE rollout, for example, the connected home, are very important components to that. But for that, you need spectrum. And for that, you need open competition, and you need new entrants, like the typical rain model, you know, where it's not the best quality, but it's very affordable and you can afford to be connected. The fiber that are starting to roll out now to more rural areas, you know, so the businesses can run more efficiently with, how can I say, unlimited internet access, you know. So this whole need for connecting the nation and allowing people to work from home and being educated and cutting the costs down and government enabling the economy is very dependent on data and technology. And government has a big role to play and a responsible role to play in the award, the fair, responsible award of the spectrum. Because that spectrum, if it's not allocated correctly and not given it to open up competition, MVNOs, and new entrants and new investment to the nation, it's kind of wasted, because you're giving the same monopoly or the same setup bigger wealth rather than diversifying that commodity and allowing it to become used by all, you know. So that's really kind of where we see a natural evolution happening, where we have no choice. If we want to grow the economy, we're going to have to look at how data plays a role in that. And if you look at the United Emirates and most of the Arab states, legislation and regulations there are saying we only want 2 operators and we want 3 MVNOs, and then they control the market. And what they do is they only offer spectrum based on a balance between mobile virtual network operators and operators, because the operators are rolling out the infrastructure and acquiring customers, but the MVNOs are acquiring customers and giving the value to the subscribers.
That's very interesting.
So, yeah, very, very interesting. And I hope that the regulator is going to deliver on, I think, economic expectations on this. It's already quite, I believe there's some controversy around the allocation, but, you know, we've got to trust the process, and hopefully, you know, they open up the market through MVNOs, because it's possible.
I hope so too, Valde. I mean, it's critical, as you mentioned. I mean, earlier you touched on the customer rewards through MVNAs, and it's quite interesting the impact that can have in a downturn economy as we find ourselves right now. When you start rewarding your customers, it's a good thing when an economy is like this.
Yes, absolutely. And the thing is, if you look at the cost of goods, you know, you take a person and has to get in a taxi, drive to a supermarket, go and buy rice, then they have to go somewhere else and they buying expensive data, and then they have to go to another shop to do something else. I think the whole idea of offering, you see it all over, you know, with the likes of Time Bank and ShopRite Financial Services and FNB Financial and Capitec coming to the market. All of those services, wherever you go, should offer connectivity. There's some basic commodities, which is ability not to carry cash and manage your money, to transact, to share money, to transfer money, all of that, along with, you know, the more being rewarded with something that really connects you to the world. Those poor people leave, you know, the people that are living in more rural areas leave something, they buy 10 Rand airtime, or they can barely afford the unlimited WhatsApp package, and they go back to an area where there's poor connectivity and they can't afford data. And, you know, so what those retailers like Boxercom do, and Pick n Pay and the ShopRites and the new entrant banks are more app driven, because you can do banking on an app. What they do is they bring that right to the home. So rewarding the customer, one of the most valuable commodities, data, is very important. So every time you top up, you get more data. Every time you shop, you can decide if you want money or if you want data. It makes sense.
And of course the loyalty that it buys you with that particular customer, you can't even quantify that. I mean, that's extraordinary. And the rewards, and I hope that we come in line with the rest of the world, because you said that from a rewards point of view, you're so right. We are further back where it goes from the rest of the world, and how customers get rewarded in MVNOs. Now, I want to just touch on earlier what you were talking about, how critical connectivity is, and the fact that this current environment, we've got the spectrum that's going on, and your wish is that it gets done in a fair process, because at the end of the day, it's the customer and the consumers that need to win, because we all need to have that kind of connectivity. Are you optimistic over the next 2 years that this process is going to be done in a fair way?
Yes, I am. I have personal views on the lessons learned, in regulation from prior years. I think our government has, in a way, made a lot of mistakes in the way they provide infrastructure and services. And I think that the ICT sector is one that still hasn't been, it's been successful because it's been predominantly privatized, and run by private organizations who have shareholders, which makes that you can see the dynamics and the aggression. Mm-hmm. And I'm hoping that the government will find a balance between an economic need, driving the agenda around the economic need. So it can't pivot around the same follow the money strategy. It has to pivot around follow the economic need strategy. And that balancing thing, we so much in our industry want to, as MVNOs, and we understand this field, and we deal with so many top clients, and we understand the importance of data, not just from an operator perspective, but from a market perspective. That sometimes we sort of want to invite a regulator to speak to us to say, what's your views? What do you think the economy is going? How do you think we need to allocate spectrum? Because you've got a couple of factors. You've got the rollout of fiber, which is still young. So fiber has to become quicker, cheaper, and more accessible, because fiber is a future, and it can be rolled out to central, high congestion, high habitated areas of the country. You don't need to have just fixed LTE, because there's a limit of what technology can do and how much technology is available. And then there's the 5G discussion. Again, 5G is going to eat up a lot of speed. It's a more premium speed because it's high product, good for business, but not necessarily what the basic consumer needs. So now when you take the need of the economy, which understands the employment, understands medical services, understands the impact of COVID, the impact of education, schools that are struggling, that can no longer be done the same way. It has to be done virtual. The government has to think about that. And if they can't allocate it all, I would suggest, my view is that some of the spectrum gets reserved. Some gets allocated to release the network so they got good coverage and the pricing comes down, but other spectrum gets reserved and allocated for economic needs through new entrant, through diversification, through open competition. So I'm hopeful, but we never know. I still have faith that the government is going to take this quite seriously. They're going to surround themselves with clever people. And in terms of the economic needs of connecting the nation, as opposed to just the award of spectrum.
But Valde, just to that point, you raised so many interesting issues. It needs to be done properly. It needs to be allocated properly. And if it does, and it all goes according to plan and the way you're talking about it, and I'm excited, and I follow the same vision that you have. The impacts to the economy, to the average consumer, to MVNOs, it's going to have a massive impact to the economy.
Exactly. And that's why we are so excited about being in this field. That we've been at this for about 7 years. The last 2 years, we've seen significant change, in the fact that brands like the Pick n Pay Group, like ShopRite, have gone live. There are other banks who will follow suit, definitely. F&B has been very successful. Mr. Price was one of the innovators, and they started, and they're going to accelerate the growth, because today as a client, even with the eSIM coming out, you really are less sensitive to the networks, and you're sensitive to pricing and to value. And basically what you want to do as a consumer, you deserve the right, like any basic commodity, to be connected to the world, to know what's going on, to be able to so that it serves the nation in terms of the economic needs. So that's what we do. You know, when we integrated the Pick and Pay group to MTN, you know, we got so excited about this. Of course, it's a business deal, but the most important thing is you have this giant, and now ShopRite have just gone live. You know, you have these two giants that can actually, every time you go and buy some groceries and you come out of the till, they can reward you in airtime. So the value of that, now they're in a dilemma because there's two value systems. There's the mobile operators who distribute airtime and pay them commission a lot of money because people buy Vodacom, MTN, Cell C, Telkom. And then there's their own airtime, which they now brand and they now put their money at different margins. So they have to find and navigate the way, and the networks and these powerful retailers who in a way have more power than operators on reach, on distribution, in customer engagement, you know, in certain sectors of the market. They're now competing against each other. So how do they find a happy medium that the customer benefits from all of this? Because you see, the operators can't launch a reward system like FNB can, or like ShopRite can, or like Pick and Pay can, because you don't go to a Vodacom store to do groceries or buy maize or buy necessities. So there's a natural, if the regulator sets the award of spectrum and allows it for competition, you can see how the natural demands and needs in the market start balancing the connectivity, you know, allowance and availability. And that's kind of, it's a natural thing that will happen. If you look at the Dutch market, it's full of MVNOs. It's a very competitive market. Customers benefit all the way. If you go to the more modern states, as I said, they're leapfrogging the old way of doing business. They're saying, guys, we need wholesale in the country. Otherwise, how do we connect the nation? You know, we need to be able to offer, if you look at India, India is a very good example of how they just discounted. Everybody's making money, consumers will benefit, and the economy is recovered because everybody can afford data.
And look how much value the customer's getting with the data. I mean, the data costs in India and the cost of communicating and staying connected, it's extraordinary. Well, it's certainly lots to think about over there, and I do hope that this business model becomes even more successful and comes to fruition, because at the end of the day, it's the customer that's going to win, it's the consumer that's going to win, and it's the economy that's going to win, which ultimately will be the country going forward. And we so need that injection into the economy and the value into data services that are still perceived to be expensive, let's be honest. Valde Ferradaz, who's the Chief Executive Officer at Ignition Telecoms and Head of MVN-X, thank you for joining us at the MyBroadband conference.
Thank you, Aki. It's a pleasure.